If you put a boundary down and now you feel guilt, good. No, 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 no. You're not responsible for how he feels. There's a outright fear that if a woman says a boundary to a man could have this wound as well. It's really in the daily interactions, when you shrink, when you fawn. So you put a boundary down and now you feel guilty. Welcome aboard. If you feel that, but you put a boundary down, then you ought to congratulate yourself. You ought to pat yourself on the back that you successfully put a boundary down. And I'm saying successfully because you at least did something. Or maybe you're here because you're struggling with putting the boundaries down and you still feel an overarching feeling of guilt. Yesterday, I was at my campsite in the forest, and this man came up to me. I was in the car. I was really deep in doing some personal development work, and I hear all of a sudden, "Hi." And I was like so deep in my own thing that I really didn't want to be disturbed, and I peel my head out of the car, and it's this man, and he's holding his lawn chair, and he says, "Hi, wanted to come over and talk with you." And I said, "I am really deep in some personal stuff right now. I can't," I said. And I probably might have said it almost in that tone that I just gave you. That was a little bit, a little annoyed, but I actually paused for a second before when he said hi. I didn't want to make an introduction. I didn't want to be disturbed. That was my initial, boundary. See, here's the thing. We demonize anger, but anger will show you where there's a boundary that you have. Now, granted, exploding on other people is, that's not a very good way of putting a boundary down. But when you're early in your boundaries journey, that may be the way that you start exploding, because this is a craft to hone, right? You've got to refine your skills as you go along, is what I'm saying. So, and he walked away anyway. The guy walked away with his chair. And I thought, when I saw him with his chair, the reason also I got a little mad is that I was like, my God, the audacity was not even my thought. It was my reaction was that he had audacity to not just walk over and say hi, but to actually bring his lawn chair along, like he was going to be granted my time and energy. And which I'm very protective over, to be honest, or I would say discerning. I'm discerning about it. I don't always like to use protective because I don't walk around the world anymore like I have to protect myself from everything. I used to be like that. That was where I was on my journey years ago, of that I had to really monitor who I was around, because I would absorb other people's energy and all of that. And, if you're an empath, that's something that happens. If you're maybe fearful, avoidant, attachment style, that is also in this bag, okay? Codependency as well. They're not all the same, and I can go into them each in another video if you want, but I'm mentioning them all because these are things that I've had to heal from. And yeah, I would say that, there's such thing as an empath that is getting drained all day and not discerning and not, they're operating from a programming of being a victim, that they're an empath, they're a victim, and that, oh my God, I'm too weak, I can't be around this, versus someone who knows versus someone who is an empath, right? But they are not in this hypervigilance where all day they're worrying about who they're going to be around. They know their capacity and they're able to renew their well, and they know when it's getting low, and how to be discerning, not hypervigilant. Okay, and discernment is something to work on. It's a practice, really, to become discerning. And early on, it's kind of like the anger thing is like you get angry first to get your boundaries, and then for maybe years later, you're like I was yesterday, where I was not very emotional about this guy, towards this guy, and then you won't be emotional about it someday. It takes time and practice, right? Like when the guy came up to me yesterday, it took me a moment, and I didn't have to think of my boundary. I just said, I'm really deep in something personal right now. I can't. But after the fact, when he walked away, and I thought the nerve with his lawn chair, I felt a little angry about it. And so why am I filming this video? Because, well, first off, I'm very called to work with those and share my story, and with those who are really challenged with this, what I had to live through, which was going around with these unconscious patterns that were very self-destructive at times, these codependent, fearful, avoidant patterns, behaviors, and ways of being. Those are behaviors, right? And a big part of what I had to heal was this thing around guilt. So after this guy walked away, I felt like, after the anger, then I felt like a little guilt came up. And I said, oh, this is like an ancient remnant, that of guilt. Like, oh, did I feel a little sorry for saying no to him? And I know better by now. It's like, no. You're not responsible for how he feels. You're not responsible for entertaining him. Okay? And this is not an attack on men, by the way, but I am going to say something in here now about wounds of the masculine and the feminine. And I'm sure it's going to ruffle some feathers, probably, because people are always going to take something wrong, but I'm going to say this anyway. First off, before I begin, we have both energies. Anyone, doesn't matter your sex or your gender, you have both energies in you, but one is going to be more dominant. It's pretty much impossible to balance the two, but if you're in the game of healing, you're here to heal the wounds of each, right? A big wound of the masculine is this wound around being rejected. And then a lot of men keep going to women for validation, and to validate also their feelings, because they're not doing the job of honoring their own feelings, of being responsible for their own emotional capacity. Okay? Now, and then we've got wounds of the feminine, which is one that I felt this remnant of yesterday, which is this guilt and fear even. There's a outright fear that if a woman says a boundary to a man, not only will they make them feel bad by rejecting them. And yeah, I'm pouting here sarcastically if you can't tell. I get paid to humiliate men too, by the way. Men employ me for that as a dominatrix. So I'm not having it, okay? Is what I'm saying also here. But there's this outright fear also that if you say no to a man, they may get violent. And ladies, if you're watching this, you know what I'm saying. This is a collective wound, okay? And this goes so far, it can be so far in the spectrum that you have, women, or even a man could have this wound as well. And I've met men who are actually, they hate other men, or they're afraid of other men, which is very, this is, anyways, it's not uncommon is what I was going to say. You have women who are so far along the wounding spectrum that they actually hate men. Okay. And if you're a man and you're triggered by that, that's your work also to heal the wound that some women hate you. That's not your problem either. You're not there to fix those women. You're there to show up in your frame, in your masculine frame, and heal your wounds and not be conditional with love, unless you want to be, you know, whatever. But true love is unconditional. It's not about like, oh, they validated me, now I give them love. No, that's not love. That's conditional love. It's not really love. It's just conditional giving, we can call it, you know. I'm going down the rabbit hole a little bit here, but yeah, I wrote about it. I journaled about it after this happened. This guy walks up, and it was exactly when I looked back down at my phone, it was 333. So I said, okay, we've got to record this now. This is some burning topic to put out there. I want to say something also about this guilt thing. And this is never going to be the last video on guilt, okay? There's so many layers of this crap, okay? Guilt and shame, they can really, really hold us back, right? But they can also be a motivator for change if we choose them to be. You know, there's this fine line between this guilt is, I'm going to take this guilt and I'm going to utilize this for my growth and change because it's showing me something is off. Or now you do not actually use it and you let yourself basically go into self-cannibalism, where you are berating yourself extra and just ruminating in it over and over. And then when I say this, I get a little afraid actually saying this because I'm like, oh my God, somebody's going to hear this and they're going to think, oh, she's scolding me for that. No, I'm not. Okay. I've been there hundreds of times, you know? And so here's the thing also is that codependency and and I ruffled some feathers saying this terminology in a different video. I called it the trend of the trend of the disempowered empath. And somebody took it in a weird way. And what I was saying is that people, it doesn't matter what, we attach ourselves to these labels because that's what the ego does. As humans, we've got an ego, right? We attach to it. And we can either go into this inverted ego where we are so low, I'm such a victim, I'm so powerless. Why did I grow up this way? It's because I grew up in this dysfunctional home and now I'm just this emotional sponge to everyone around me. And I can't be around that because I'm too much of an empath, blah, blah. Or we can go on this other end of the spectrum where we're on this superiority complex. That, well, I'm sensitive and I sense people's emotions and I know what's going on and I'm intuitive. And look, where does that get us as well? That can go to our head real fast, okay? Look, it can be, you can become an evolved empath and it can become a great gift that you transform your survival strategy, right? But we have to be careful about the spiritual ego because the spiritual ego, it always evolves with us as long as we are on this planet and we continue ascension. The spiritual ego is always in this sparring match with us, okay? And it's the way it is. We've got to be careful. We've got to check ourselves, right? So I want to say now, guilt. If you put a boundary down and now you feel guilt, good. Maybe you didn't do it with so much tact that you wanted to. Okay, fine. But you did it, you put it down. Or maybe you didn't do it and now you feel some guilt. This is your motivator. Said that funny. I like the way I said it though. This is your motivator for recalibrating again. Okay? Recalibration. Your guilt, you can actually use this to motivate you, okay? And this is an art to hone, okay? I mean, my goodness, I'm sharing with you in this channel my double life. My other life as a dominatrix. I don't look like this when I'm doming. You know, guys pay me, mostly men. Sometimes it's women, but that's rare. Men pay me to deny them. some of them want denial. You know, we can go into like psychology and reasons why, but this actually was healing for me in a certain realm, in a realm of conscious kink, or BDSM as it's called, to be able to get comfortable or accepting of denying someone. Basically, fetishize denial. Fetishize something that is shunned. And, you know, that goes the other way for them too. They're fetishizing this denial thing. But that's doing it in like a safe container. I realized over the years as a dominatrix that I was able to bring some of that into my personal life or my life outside of dom work, but it's really in the day-to-day, daily interactions where things could get sticky, where you're not in a safe space, where you're just at your campsite, you know, and someone just comes up to you all of a sudden. It's really in the daily interactions, these little nuances even that you may notice when you shrink, when you fawn. Shall I take a moment to talk about the fawn response? And when I talk about these responses, don't think that you're powerless, okay? And I'll get there and explain to you why you're not, okay? The unconscious, I'm calling these are unconscious reactions when we are faced with a stimuli of trauma or something that is a threat, right? Trauma. There's fight, literally what it sounds like. You fight, you put your boundary down, etc. There's flight, where you flee the situation, right? Think of animals in the wild. These are all reactions that they have when a predator comes. There's freeze, playing dead. Maybe you did that. You know, a lot of us do that when, especially in the presence of sexual trauma. We freeze up, we dissociate, we leave our bodies, right? And there's fawn. Fawn response is where you appease the other party, the predator or the attacker or the threat. You know, you can even think of how animals do this. Animals have become domesticated because they fawned. They agreed in this unconscious way for their survival. They agreed to be our friend, maybe. They agreed to be domesticated. You know, I mean, could we call it agreeing when it's done out of fawn response? You know, this is up for debate. And it's a slippery slope to explain this stuff also, because I'm afraid that someone will react and think that I'm victim blaming. And that is not at all what I would ever want to do, okay? But the problem also with the slippery slope is that we think that if we keep viewing ourselves as a victim, that we go into these responses, we will never take responsibility for our reactions, for our ability to be present, be mindful and present, and choose in the moment. Because that's the optimal. That's what we want, right? Is to actually have that empowerment to do that. And that comes with each practice shot. Hey, you didn't get to do your boundary today. You didn't do it as good as you wanted to, let's say, or as tactful, or you fawned maybe. You agreed to something that you actually didn't want. And now you feel guilty. Well, now here you are becoming aware. And awareness is about 90% of the work. I know that sounds like when I say it, when I hear someone else say it, right? It's not 90% of the work is awareness. I think back on my 13 years of this journey and I'm like, yeah, it is. Because in awareness, there's so much pain that's coming up, right? And we have all this denial that we have to break through to become aware. And it actually is a big meaty part of the work. The rest is the actual action, for example, and action of saying your boundary, right? So I would love to say, I'm writing you permission slip to not feel guilty. but it's not really possible. What I want to say with this gusto is that this is the natural course, the way that things go. If you want to become empowered, like truly empowered, instead of giving your center away to other people, instead of being ruminating in guilt, oh my gosh, I feel bad for that man. Oh, why? Oh, because I never was able to say my boundaries as a child and now I'm a 30 blank year old person, woman maybe. What I want you to do now at this point of the video is I want you to reflect on the last situation or the one that's coming up for you right now where you feel guilty about putting a boundary down or not putting it down. And what I want you to do, and this is really, really powerful if you write it down and not even just typing it. I'm saying this also to myself because lately I've been doing more handwriting instead of just typing it out on my phone, and it's really processing much, much better. It's very powerful. And it seems so simple, right, to write these things down, but it really is more impactful. I want you to reflect on what was this last thing, the thing that comes up that you feel guilt over, this boundary. Maybe it was that someone was talking your ear off and dumping a bunch of their stuff, and now you took that on and you couldn't kick them out of your apartment in time, maybe, or your house. You finally did. You said, oh my God, now I have a headache. Oh my gosh, now what did I do? I did it again. I was rescuing them. Why were you rescuing them? Did you feel maybe that you felt like, ooh, I can help them inside? Admit it. These are things that we do as empaths, as codependents, or recovering codependents. You know, even people who are not even that codependent can do this. It's part of the drama triangle, as it's called. And so reflect on this, and now write down after this, what is your success in this? And I want you to really note even the smallest little thing. Maybe it's just a small thing. Maybe it's actually a gold mine, but you're reducing it. You're reducing it because that's what could be a pattern that you do, to reduce the importance. But it is these baby steps. It is these baby steps. I feel called to share this one last thing here, because what comes up for me now, and I feel this tenderness in my heart. If you cannot walk, crawl. Apparently Martin Luther King said these lines. He might have put a little bit more to it. Many years ago, 13 years ago, it was 2011, I was in college, my last year, and we had this, it was this outreach program that you could get credits for. It was a sort of class. And we went to this women's shelter down in Midtown in Miami. And it was just this chill kind of class that was like easy credits, really, to just go down to Midtown where there was this women's shelter, and we would do art with the women. And at the time, I was in an abusive relationship myself. This is what is so fascinating to me about denial, okay? I was wondering about the stories of these women, how they got there. Like, even though months before, there I was being sent to the victim advocacy center on campus by a friend. My partner was arrested for abusing me. I was sent to women in distress. And there I was, like, it was not really registering that I was being abused. Okay, this is what's so crazy about it, is people go, why won't they leave? You don't know you're being abused, especially if you grew up with someone abusing you. It doesn't register. You're used to that, right? And there I was drawing this interesting picture with this woman. This like really tall, light-skinned black woman who had a shaved hair. Never forget her. No idea what her name was now. And her side was all yellows and all these things, and my side was like deep colors. And she looks at me and she says, "Oh, you're using a lot of really dark colors. You must be in a dark place." And inside I was like, "The hell?" she's saying. Like, I'm thinking. And then at the same time I was like, "Oh, I just like dark colors." And I don't remember how she got it out of me, but she started talking a little and asked me something. And there I unfolded my story that basically that my partner was arrested like a week ago or something it was. And all of these things. And there she was, holding space for me. And I remember the words she said. She said, "If you can't walk, crawl, crawl." And those words never left me. Maybe your baby steps, you kept falling. Start crawling. Crawl. It's worthy. Every freaking baby step is worth it. Every crawl is worth it. Now I want you to acknowledge what awareness, what change you're able to have that you just did. What did you just create? What did you just calibrate a little bit towards? And it can't be just watching this video and having an awareness. I want you to also take it further. I want you to take this gusto. Use your anger to advocate for your boundaries. And it's not that other person's, it's not your fault. This is going to sound funny. It's not your fault how they react to you putting your boundary down, because they are responsible for their own reactions or responses. You are responsible for yours. Thank you for joining me today. We are on Bell Rock in Sedona. Here's a juniper tree over here. I've been doing some inner child work under it. It's giving me some little bit of protection from the sun here. And this is the inspired talk of the day. And if you feel so inclined, write your awarenesses below. If you like this video, give it a like. If you want to stay connected, subscribe. And I will see you next time. I love kissing rocks, don't you? This is a good rock. It's Bell Rock. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. Such a special place.